Yes, thank you, Leela.
Okay. So good morning to all my viewers in the UK and good afternoon to everyone watching this webinar in India. My name is Leela and I'm your host today on behalf of Sapio Analytics, which is a data-driven government advisory firm that is working with the government of India and state governments like the government of Telangana in their fight against COVID and the economic recession. It was started with the aim of bridging the gap between new age technology and governance. Thanks to what Sapio is doing, data-driven policymaking is gaining prominence in India. I have the rare honor and privilege of presenting to you today a person I have the utmost regard for, a person who has achieved a lot in her life while retaining her grace and innate kindness. We live in the most challenging times today where every man, woman, and child has been impacted by the world pandemic of COVID-19. The world will never be the same again. I thank you all for joining me in my interview with one of the UK's most influential and connected leaders, Baroness Sandip Verma, who is an Indian English politician in the UK, an appointed member of the House of Lords, previously Under Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change. She is currently the Ministerial Champion for tackling violence against women and girls overseas. The Baroness also chairs the UN Women's National Committee amongst a host of other roles. She will share her thoughts on a post-COVID world and what it will look like and the challenges we will face. Let us share in her inspirational journey from very humble beginnings to becoming a powerhouse of influence. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Baroness Sandip Verma. Good morning, Baroness.
Good morning.
Something that has intrigued me for a while now. What extraordinary work brought you to the limelight and helped you achieve your title as a Baroness?
Thank you. First of all, Leela, I just want to thank you and Sapio and everybody who's joined us here and on the YouTube, because technology has allowed us to do that in this horribly challenging time. And I can see some familiar faces too. So I want to say good morning to my friends in the UK and good afternoon to my friends in India. It's great to have so many people joining today. And also I just want to make one slight correction for you because it's right and proper that I was a ministerial champion under David Cameron. I'm no longer in government and I'm able to do a lot more work outside of government because as you know, ministers are tied by a ministerial code, whereas once you're free from government, you can pretty much say and do what you want. But having said that, it was an honor to serve my country as a government minister. I was the first South Asian woman on the front benches in the history of Parliament in the UK. So for me, that was a stepping stone to show what can be done, even though independence from India was not that long ago in the scheme of things. So we've all come a long way. Now, you asked about what will the world look like post-COVID? And I think it's really about what do we want it to look like? Because it's really shaped our thinking now of what really is important to us. You know, a lot of people have been forced into lockdown and it doesn't matter how wealthy you are or how influential you are, we're all in lockdown. Nobody can challenge that because this virus has forced us all actually to be in that same equal space. One of the things, of course, that's come out of it is an appreciation for those people who are our frontline critical workers and the challenges and the dangers that they face on a daily basis has just been really highlighted even more so by the fact that, you know, they are the front line and the ones, and particularly in the UK, and I suspect all over the world, they have been the ones who have had to really face up and have lost many, many lives trying to protect the rest of us. So I think an appreciation of those people has come to the forefront. And I think the second thing is, excuse me, Leela, it's very dry and humid here. I think the second thing is have our value systems actually changed a little bit for wanting us to realign some of what we want to do? Is being on the hamster wheel and accumulating lots and lots of wealth now secondary to actually a better quality of life? We've had time to now spend time with our families. We've had time to appreciate some of the more things that nature has given us because we weren't able to do anything else. So maybe our moral compass has changed somewhat. At least I hope so. And I hope that an appreciation of a value for each other, regardless of your socioeconomic background, actually makes you a better person. You know, the one thing I will say, and you know, my mission in life is to put on the face of every discussion I enter the position of women. And you know, when 51% of the population of the world is female, it's really, really important that we also then gauge the important input that the female voice has on shaping the lens of the world as we want to see it. And you know, where there have been women leaders across the world, many of them have taken decisions in a very different way to some of the more gallant approaches of male leaders. So I think it's a reflection for all of us. I must admit that India, you know, is now going through its very challenging time of the peak coming. And, you know, and it is for each and every individual to support the government's drive to be able to stop the virus by doing their own individual piece of responsibility and looking very carefully at how they are part of the bigger solution of trying to combat this ugly, killing virus that we have here today.
Baroness, your family in particular owns a number of different businesses. And how do you think these have been affected by COVID-19 in a sort of practical sense?
Yeah, you're right. Thank you, Leela. And one of the businesses that we have, of course, is Frontline Care. You know, our care workers are there supporting people within their own home settings. And I must say, and I want to put it on record, that we cannot give enough credit to those people going out there every single day taking care of others and really risking their lives. I mean, our care workers, we've always found them as part and parcel of our family. I mean, you know, my businesses are run very much on the basis that our businesses are at their best when each and every worker in them feels that they have an ownership to the business. So they have been out there on the forefront, and you know, it's been a challenging time for them. It's been a challenging time for all of us to keep our staff safe. But I would say that the one thing we have appreciated, and they have never, ever rescinded from their duties, is the fact that they have gone out there under all circumstances to be able to give the care that they've been giving for many, many years. In fact, this year, we celebrate 20 years in this sector. But, wow, you know, our other businesses, we have a fitness studio, which we, you know, it's a fitness studio which we cannot utilize at the moment because of COVID. We have our international businesses where we cannot travel at the moment. So there's a lot of challenges, and it's going to take a lot of us to rethink how we're going to do business in the future, because COVID isn't going anywhere for a long time. So we've got to manage a new norm, and that new norm may be that we use technology better.
The other question I had for you was, do you think isolation caused due to COVID has accentuated problems like depression and other mental health issues?
Yeah, I think one of the learnings we're going to have from post-COVID is the mental health stresses that have been put on families and individuals. I mean, you know, we've all had to learn to either isolate by ourselves or isolate in small family units where we've not been able to go out. And, you know, human beings are social animals. And the fact that we've not been able to go out and to speak to people and interact in a normal way has been very, very challenging. And my biggest concern has been for those families where abusive households, you know, have been locked together for all of this period of time, and those voices have not been heard. And I suspect once we have the lockdowns across the world, when they come out of lockdown, there will be many, many cases where, you know, people in abusive relationships, children who have witnessed those relationships, children who have been abused themselves, will have a lot of issues to deal with. And I hope that our healthcare systems and our policymakers and across the wider government bodies, that there is an understanding that we have got to really respond to this in a 360 way, that, you know, schools have got to deal with it, health systems have got to deal with it. You know, the way we look at it through every single department will have to respond to some of the invisible stresses and challenges that people have faced, also some of the physical challenges. And, you know, in UK, the surge in domestic violence has really gone, it's rocketed. And those are women who've been able to access the helplines. Right. And yet there are many, many, many women, and of course men. I mustn't leave out that there, of course, are men who are also in abusive relationships. But those people have got no avenue at this moment in time. And so we've got to be very mindful that there will be a large part of the population that will need gentle, sensitive care.
Coming on to another issue that is very close to your heart, anti-discrimination. Do you think there has been a significant increases in cases of that as well?
So I think discrimination, racism, you know, whether it's on disability, color, creed, religion, I think, you know, we as a population across the world have got to really start asking the questions, why do we buy into the fact that we still believe that other people are less than us or more than us? And I think, you know, Black Lives Matter movement has raised a number of issues globally. But, you know, for those of us who, and many of those in India as well, you know, the color of your skin still is such a predominator on what you're going to achieve in life. And I find it appalling. I mean, you know, in the UK, we've fought racism for a long, long time. Is it still there? Yes, of course it is. It's institutionalized. You know, we put it into people's minds from a very early age, but we've got to be the ones to also eradicate it. We can't buy into it. And Leela, my worry is that we still have this this pink lens in our minds where we still think fair is better and dark is bad. And, you know, it still exists even in India. And I find it quite annoying and quite abhorrent that we are still buying into this culture of, you know, lightning creams and fair is beautiful and everything else is not. It's a colonial legacy we need to get shot of. You know, we should be proud and happy and comfortable in the skin we're born in. And I've been able to stand up in the UK and do my work because I am extremely comfortable with my skin. I'm extremely comfortable with the background I come from. And I'm extremely comfortable to challenge people on the history I come from. So I think we've got to learn to be confident in ourselves. And we can't buy in to the fact that there is a superiority of one group of people over another. You know, I work in Africa, and even in Africa, there is a discrimination of light black and dark black. I mean, you know, these are silly. Today, the world needs to understand the value people bring, the abilities, the opportunities, the accessibility, the equality of being able to access all of those things on what you can offer, not what you look like. Your looks are basically irrelevant to what your actual value is to what you're going to bring to the table. So I always look, I'm 5'2.5". You know, I am now, well, I turned 61 this year, and I am short and I am slightly on the, Indian people call it healthy size. So, but it doesn't stop me from being a challenging voice who's still very comfortable in her own skin. And I put it out to everybody there. Just be comfortable with who you are. And if you've got an aspiration, just go for it.
I could have sworn you're at least 6 foot tall. You punch well above your height, I can tell you that. But I think you're absolutely right about the color complex we have as Indians. I can say a lot of us have been emotionally scarred and affected by it, and it's something we really need to get past. Moving on, what do you perceive will be the long-term impact on people's lives in terms of, movement, our social lives, like things we took for granted in the past before COVID, like eating out, the pub culture, vacations? What do you think will be the changed paradigm?
Do you know, because I was coming onto this this program today, I actually spoke to a range of people, and I wanted to get a feel from them how they felt, and it was across all ages. And the biggest thing that came out as a common denominator, they felt overwhelmed that they would have to reconnect with normal society again, because they don't even know what normal society will look like. We're now getting used to people wearing face coverings. We're getting used to people not coming close to us. I mean, the last time you actually were able to hug a close relative, and we're in lockdown second time in Leicester. I haven't seen my mother for nearly 3 weeks. So I have FaceTime with her. But that immediate human connect, I mean, what's that going to feel like? And I think, from when I listen to people over the last few days, it's a fear of something they can't see, something they can't smell, and yet they know that it's there. And I think all of us as communities across the globe, all of us have got to come together as support systems for each other and actually say that it's going to be my husband sneaking across the back of me. You might have seen him. So no subtlety there. But the point I'm trying to make, and it's really serious, is this feeling of fear and overwhelming sort of apprehension. And I think that's worrying a lot of people. And, and I spoke to a mother yesterday who's got a daughter with several underlying health conditions. And she said she was okay before the lockdown. And now she's so frightened of stepping outside the house. I think that's the big challenge for all of us is going to be, how do we overcome the fears? And then there are a group of people who have completely ignored the fact that they have got a responsibility to others, and they have put their own selfish needs above everybody else. Now, be it is a small group, and there are people, of course, who economically can't stay at home because they have to work. So I think all of us are going to face some big challenges. I don't think the world is going to be the same for a very long time yet, but I think it's the emotional challenges that are going to be much more prevalent than the actual physical.
I mean, what we've seen is in the UK, the government has actually stepped in to help businesses recover financially. Whereas in India, I'm finding that there is no such succor. But I have seen Indians actually step up and take the lockdowns, the curfews, the social distancing very seriously. So what is your opinion? Should it be the state's responsibility, the government's responsibility, or is it individual responsibility to tackle the pandemic? How does it work, do you think?
So I think it's both. I think it's actually both. I mean, and I'm extremely grateful for what the government of UK has done. I mean, it was the first of its kind across the world. We did get the support that the people who were going to suddenly find themselves not able to work, get the furlough scheme. And, 75% of your wage has been paid by the government of the UK. And as we slowly come out of that, of course, the government has got to figure out how it's now going to make sure that we can pay for that in the future, because, spending billions and billions of pounds supporting people to stay at home supporting businesses. I mean, the government has spent billions ensuring that the businesses have got grants, have got funds to be able to access loans from the banks. You know, there's been very, very generous packages in the UK. But ultimately, Leela, it has to be paid back. It's the public purse. And the public purse needs to pay back, otherwise we won't get the services that each and every one of us in the UK enjoy every single day. The health service, the roads being cleaned, you know, the police, all of these services have got to be paid for. Whereas I think your point is the government has got a duty, absolutely. The people of the country have got an equal duty, absolutely. And it's about finding out, and you said rightly, even in the UK, people have really stepped up. And I think that's right and proper. And I think that's what COVID has done. It's allowed people to step up and to demonstrate. And, you know, even in my own home city of Leicester, I mean, I have seen so many people, restaurateurs have gone out there and provided thousands and thousands of meals to people who cannot afford them, cannot access the monies to go out and buy. You know, I mean, you know, I know Manoj was on a few minutes ago, you know, that they have themselves have given tens of thousands of meals. So there's lots of good work that's gone on. I hope it carries on, but I do worry that suddenly we're going to go back to normal times and everybody's back into thinking about themselves.
Well, we hope not. A second wave is predicted any minute now. And do you think the UK will have achieved herd immunity by then, seeing as we've got a huge number of cases?
So I think what we need to look at is how the world is coming together for the vaccines. And I think, you know, we know, or we're expecting a second wave, but in the winter times in the UK, you also know we had the flu, which really does have a massive impact on all of us. So I think, you know, with the University of Oxford with AstraZeneca have come up with hopefully a really good vaccine. I do want that the world is collectively collaborative in sharing the knowledge of vaccines, because it's really no point in one country or two countries or three countries in the developing world having the vaccine while the rest don't, because the vaccine is not going to know barriers and boundaries. It doesn't know that, you know, the vaccine's over here and not over there. So we need to make sure that we work collectively and collaboratively. I think we need to prepare ourselves for the second wave. And I think that means that we carry on doing all the hygiene measures that we've been doing. That is important, that we stick to the rules and that we look out for each other. And, you know, one of the things that's come out of it has been, I mean, we're talking about it in the UK at the moment, about obesity, the impact on our modern lifestyles, on why the numbers of cases in the UK have had an impact on the size you are. So maybe we need to revisit some of our other areas of healthcare. What do we do personally, take as a responsibility for ourselves? Do we have a proper diet? Are we giving our children the right information about the food calories that they need to take in? Are we doing enough exercise? You know, I remember Prime Minister Modi saying something about gyms and fitnesses and saying, instead of going up an escalator to a studio or a gym, why don't you just walk up the stairs? So I think there are small things that we can do that help everybody else. I do think, though, that we need to all be prepared that if not this virus, there will be another virus and viruses to come. How does the world reshape itself to be much more collaborative on sharing knowledge, on productions of new vaccines for everyone, so that it's not just the Western world or the developed world that get them first and everybody else has to wait? I think that's an unfair world, and I don't want to see that after this pandemic.
Do you think winter, as it's fast approaching now in the UK, do you think it will be more difficult, or do you think it'll be easier to control the spread of COVID in that situation with the weather?
I think people are getting fatigued in the circumstances. So for us, we've got to make sure that we're finding avenues for people to try and come back to a reasonably normal life. economies across the world will need people to go out to work. So it'll be an onus on everybody to make sure that the measures are in place for us to try and maximize what we individually, the business world, government do to support this maximization. But I do think, we haven't seen the back of this, but it's like most pandemics, they leave a lasting legacy of knowledge and being able to share that knowledge so that this particular pandemic doesn't reoccur will be on how we respond to how we're doing what we're doing now. And that means that each and every one of us has got a responsibility, not to just ourselves, but to the wider community.
Do you think the government has done enough to educate the general populace in the UK regarding the pandemic? Do you think people are informed enough?
That's a tricky one, because I think, I'll talk about Leicester because I'm here in Leicester, and it's one of the most multi-racial cities in the UK. And I think a huge amount of our problems were that we have large populations that don't speak English, that don't read English. And so the messaging in Leicester, particularly for me, was a critical minus. There wasn't enough done to communicate the messaging properly and to reach out to those communities. I also think that, local intelligence is something of great value that is often ignored. We have large swathes of community leaders that should have risen up and spoken out a little bit more loudly when they felt the messages weren't coming across. And I also think that, some of our poorest communities, whether they are from the Asian backgrounds or other minority groups, or whether they are white working class or workless class, the poorest communities always end up the ones that bear the most pressure. And I think the one thing, if we've learned anything from this pandemic, is that we have got to make sure going forward that we don't leave communities out. And that will go, I think, across India too, where, you saw where there were this mass migration of people trying to get on trains and coaches and buses to try and go back home to their villages. Because, of course, if they have no work and they cannot access food and healthcare, what do? So part of it is a resetting of our own clock, our own dial on how we actually respond to the poverty around us. And that's a poverty just of skills, a poverty of wealth, a poverty of education, a poverty of housing. In Leicester, we have huge areas, even today, that are poor housed people, densely populated areas, not much green space, and poor diets. Our healthcare systems can only respond to a certain number of people. And unless we expand that, put more money into it, the best thing is to actually work on the people. And my whole goal has been to raise awareness of how do we make sure people in cities like mine are better skilled, better educated, better homed, and have better healthcare.
In September, the schools, for instance, will reopen. And this is the case both in India and the UK. So how high do you think is the risk of mass infections when that happens?
So I think, the good thing is, I'm saying a good thing, but the children seem to be slightly better immune from this virus. Their ability to respond is stronger. I don't know why, the scientists don't know. But I do think, again, it comes back to how do we behave at home to send our children to school? Because if we're not taking the measures at home, then we're actually negating not just our responsibility to our children, but to the lives and children of other people's family, other people, and the teachers. And so, I think we've come together to make sure that we are actually looking out for each other. The schools have been putting in measures across the UK, and I'm sure they will be doing the same in India. you know, where we've got the social distancing going on, where we've got sanitization measures being put into place. But ultimately, it's for each and every one of us to play our part. But I will go back to poor communities. Poor communities cannot do it by themselves. Poor communities will need intervention. And whether that is from business communities stepping up and supporting poorer communities and those schools, or whether it's government, local government, central government stepping in and supporting those schools, they cannot do it by themselves. And it's our jobs, all of us, to make sure that, you know, whilst we may be comfortable in our own homes, that we actually do not forget that there are many, many, many more that actually don't have those facilities.
What is your take? How would you recommend people's spirits that have surely been crushed by this relentless virus? How do we reinvigorate them? How can we all help ourselves now?
So again, this was an interesting one on the questions. And, you know, I was talking to somebody who does traditional Indian sciences. And he said he's seen such a surge in people now doing mindfulness and yoga and meditation. And I actually think that has been quite true across a lot of populations. There has been this sort of take up on things that when you are on your own, when you can't do a lot of social interaction, then what do you do? The other thing I've seen as a surge in is people deciding that they can actually cook. They can actually make food at home. You know, they don't need the quick fix takeaways. And whilst, you know, it's nice to go out and socialize, but being able to understand where your food comes from, how you make it, the smells and the taste of home cooking is actually engage children to do it too. So I think there are some very small interventions that have come in and allowed us to reevaluate actually what is so important, and sitting around a table with your family, if you are able to. I mean, you know, my daughter was celebrating her birthday in May, and of course she was on her own in London. So we had a Zoom party together where we just shared, she had her little food and we had ours, but we came together on Zoom. But it made us value actually that relationship, the relationship that we sometimes put on the back burner because we think it's a relationship we've always got. And what this virus has done is shown us that actually we can't take everything for granted. I mean, during this horrible pandemic, Ashok and I have lost some really good friends. And, you know, we're not going to see them again. We didn't have time to say hello or goodbye. And, you know, they were doing such good work and the COVID took them away from us. Their families are devastated. And, you know, suddenly you find that something like this has such an impact on your lives. And yet, you know, we're on this hamster wheel trying to do so much. And then suddenly it stops. And the world, you know, I don't know if you ever sometimes think you're sitting outside looking in and you've stopped and the world in front of you keeps going. And I think many people have had that moment where they've just sat back and stopped. And each time we had news that we'd lost a friend, it made us stop. And the saddest thing is, we're not going to be able to see them again. And we weren't there to comfort their families because we couldn't. And we couldn't comfort and share their pain. So I think there's a reflection going on across the world. And I think that reflection, hopefully, will make us see our relationships in a different lens.
I agree with you because we faced a similar situation ourselves in our family, and it taught us how important people were. And yet, like you said, we managed to connect in new and different ways that we would probably never have, you know, conceived of before. Moving to a different topic, one of your biggest strengths has been your innate ability to network. So what do you think networking looks like in a post-COVID world?
I actually think, you know what, Leela, I actually think we do more networking now because look, all of these wonderful people you have here today, and the people who are listening on the YouTube, I mean, this has enabled us. You know, maybe had we not had this challenge upon us, we may not be sitting here today doing this. So I think we've got to embrace the fact that we are probably better connected. I mean, I have spent, I'm a parliamentarian, so I have to do my work during the day. And because we're in lockdown, I have to do it from virtual parliament, which is an interesting concept in itself, you know, because virtual parliament, you don't get the same sort of feel when you're in the chamber as to when you're sitting separately by yourself in your own office at home or in your bedroom or wherever you're doing your Zoom from. But I've also done lots and lots of conferences across the globe on areas that I am passionate about. You know, I'm going to be doing one tomorrow on gender, and you know, so there's lots of things that you're able to do and connect. And because I can't travel to Africa, where some of the business we're doing is, we connect by Zoom or by whatever other, there's lots of other platforms as well. And you know, I actually think we've become better connected. And my advice to everybody is that networking in itself per se is great. The follow-up is the very important thing. You cannot just network and then say, okay, I've done it, and people will remember me, and you know, and things will happen. From networking, you have to build your relationships up. And so whenever I've been to an event, or whenever, you know, people have contacted me through the social platform medium, I do make sure that I actually then go back out to them, reconnect, and then we start to build a relationship up. Now, I think people have lost the art of relationship building. And the reason why I'm good at it, my husband's good at it, is because we value relationships, so we build on them. So my husband's famous, as you all know, well, not all of you, but some of you will know, for his morning messages. I mean, he even sends me a morning message and I'm sitting next to him. And that's, you know, but he said, well, you're on a group thing. So I've also realized my value in my husband's eyes, I'm on a group thing. But that's fine. I get his morning message and that's okay. But, you know, just little things like that keep us connected. And we shouldn't want to connect with people when we need something or we want something. We need to just be able to sometimes connect, just to say, hello, how are you? I mean, one of the things I'm doing now, and I'm extremely privileged and I'm proud to have been asked to do it, is to do a council with the women of India's industry and chamber, a chamber of commerce, to do a council of that with an African country. And what is bridging together is women businesses from India, women-led businesses in the UK, and women-led businesses in one of the countries in Africa. Again, these connections are as strong as the connections will make them. You know, so if we build on those relationships, the world has become smaller, and with mediums like this, it'll get even smaller. You know, so we have to adapt.
You're so right, because I know a young person that was with you doing her work experience in the Houses of Parliament. And I remember her telling me how amazingly kind you were to every single person. You would make a point of actually addressing people by name, by asking after them. And she saw how that resulted in you getting amazing results. Whenever you had, for instance, an impromptu meeting, they would step out of their way, they would go out of their way to make sure things happened. And it's so important, you know, the whole act of kindness and how it comes back to you. So I really think that's one of your key hallmarks. And that brings me back to wanting to know how you became a baroness.
So I was growing up in a country where it was incredibly racist. And, you know, in the 60s and so, I mean, my family have been connected with the UK since the late 30s, 1930s. And I grew up as a kid. I came to England as a baby in 1960. I was born in Amritsar, and I'm so proud of the fact that I was born in Amritsar, because I think it's one of the most beautifully wonderful cities on the planet, because of the Golden Temple. And it's a spiritual home for so many people. But I came to this country, and as I grew up, the school system was incredibly difficult of people of color. And, you know, when you're one of two or one of three people of color in a classroom, it was challenging. So I grew up knowing that people were going to treat me differently because of the color of my skin and from where I came, from where I was from. And those challenges actually do shape how you grow up and see the world. It didn't make me angry. It didn't make me bitter. But what it made me do was drive down hard that everybody really should have a right to be treated equally and given a job on the merit of what they bring to the table. You know, my father came as a turbaned Sikh to the UK and could not get a job. He was an educated man and could not get a job because of his turban. And we was little, and he used to tell us of the story of the first day he went into a barber's shop to have his hair cut. Tears fell from his eyes. And so these stories shape you. They make you understand that the world still is such a long, long way away from people treating people. And you use the word kindness, you know, from being kind to each other, from seeing each other as the same. So I was, I think, 12 or 13 when I went on my first march against racism. Because, you know, when you're constantly fighting people because they can call you names, they can pick fights with you because of the color of your skin, I became quite hardened. And, you know, and you know me well, I'm not frightened of anything or anyone. And I'm certainly not frightened of taking on challenges, be it government, be it politicians, be it business, wherever they are. I will call it out. And I think it was really, really important that I stood up. Throughout my life, I've stood up for people who haven't got a voice. So I was exposed to the perils of women who were suffering domestic violence in my early 20s, and, you know, supporting them through their really traumatic times was quite a challenge for me. I was a young mom, you know, witnessing what people could do to other people was an eye-opener, but also drove me to say, this is not going to be something I can sit down and let happen. That introduced me to inequalities in business, where if you're a female business person, you can't access finance, you can't access support, you can't access all the things that are taken for granted by male business counterparts. And, you know, my husband's always been the first to push me to go out there and do things. And so when he said, go and do it, and I can't access things, then we have to challenge the system on it. And the great thing for me is, and I'm really, really fortunate and lucky, I have got the strongest supporter and fan club in having a partner that really does get it. He really does get the fact that you need to be able to go there and challenge the system. And there will be fallout, and it will be difficult, and people will get annoyed and upset. But if you're right and principled on it, then stick to your guns. And then from there, the reason I got into politics was I honestly felt politicians did not speak on my behalf. They did not represent me or people like me. And so I decided to go to a meeting where I came across people who were talking on my behalf, didn't make any sense to me. I challenged them. They approached me to join them. They said, if you've got such a high opinion of what you can do something about it, become political. So I joined actively. I was always a campaigner at grassroots throughout my 20s and 30s, but I actively became involved nationally in politics when I turned 40. It was my 40th birthday present to me. And I've never looked back. And when I fought 2 elections, and on both elections, I fought racism, I fought genderism, sexism, and I fought people from my own community who couldn't cope with a female of their history, their heritage coming forward and doing something that they couldn't or hadn't done. And so I had that discrimination also to face. So, you know, we don't help ourselves when we put our own barriers in our own ways. You know, our job should be to support people from our own backgrounds and our own communities as much as we support everybody else. Instead, we have the crab mentality and we drag people down because we couldn't do it, so nobody else should do it. And instead, what we should be doing is saying, you know what, is because we couldn't do it, we need to support somebody else who can do it. And I was very lucky. I had very good mentors. They were excellent. They really worked hard with me to help support what I wanted to do. And in the 2005 election in Wolverhampton Southwest, where I didn't win by a small margin, the party leader at the time, Michael Howard, just asked me, he said, would you like to fight another seat? Or what are you thinking about politics? And I said, I'm not going to leave politics. And he said, then I'd like you to go into the House of Lords as a member of the party to do party work there. And so in 2006, I took my place in the House of Lords, and I was on the front bench. We were in opposition at the time, and I was in front bench as an opposition minister, I think about 3 months after arriving in the House of Lords. And then I did 10.5 years as a front bench opposition minister and minister in the government, and came off the front benches in 2016 after the referendum on Brexit.
Wow. So what do you consider your personal greatest strengths?
Oh, I think I think I find good people to support me. It's a journey. You can't make it on your own. You just can't. But I've been really lucky that for every person that I've had that has tried to stop me or get in my way, I found a whole load of great people who want to come on board and support me. I think you need to make sure that you've got a very clear mission in your mind. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? What is the outcome you want to see? And I've never been unclear about that. You know, I've known always my direction of travel and how clear, that's always been clear to me. And, you know, as I said, I'm very lucky. I've got a husband who has been there by my side from day dot. You know, he looks at my frailties and makes them into strengths, you know, and so when you've got somebody who takes a weakness and turns that into a strength, tell me, how can I not succeed? And I think, you know, I think too many people believe that it's too hard. And so taking that first step to try and do something, and it doesn't have to be massive, you know, nobody has to do something really big, but at least whatever you do, you need to believe in it. And if you believe in it, other people believe in it and they come along. And I've always said leadership is always about not what you say in front to the audience, but about when you finish speaking and you turn around, how many people are there following you. That's leadership. Because I've spoken to audiences of up to 100,000 people in India. You know, I've been invited to speak at large crowds. That's not the point. The point is, after I've spoken, how many of those people have been prepared to come on my journey with me? And that, to me, has been my clear mission and my clear vision. And I think, you know, often we wait for other people to do something that we want. And I think that the best thing is, if you want it, you do it. And not wait for somebody to tell you to do it. I don't need permission to do what I want to do. I've been gifted my life. I've only got one. I don't know how long it's going to last, but I know that in it, I want to do as much as I can so that I don't have any regrets on my last breath out that I didn't try. And I think the thing is, I try, and I do it with your words. I do it with kindness and respect. I do it with knowing I'm as tough a cookie as you will ever come across. but I also respect other people's opinion, and I respect other people may know something more than I do. But if it doesn't fit in with my mission, then I ask them to do it in the way that they think is right. So that's where I think I am.
I was going to ask you, about who is your biggest supporter, but I think you've said it already in your answer. It is definitely Ashok Sir. He's just amazing. He is every bit as kind as you are and as supportive of other people. And you can see that, that's one of the big reasons why you have achieved what you have, because you've never had that worry. So hats off to Ashok Sir as well. And finally, I would like to ask you, what words of advice, inspiration would you like to give, particularly to the young people and future leaders that are watching us today?
So I think, like I said, I think you have to have a very clear mission of where you want to go. I don't think you ever need to roll over and push somebody out of the way to do it. I think if you have to destroy or undermine somebody else to achieve something for yourself, I think then, I'm sorry, somewhere along the line, the same karma will happen to you. I think the important thing is that however big or small your ambition is, make it your own, own it, and let other people know you want to do it. It's amazing, Leela, that, whenever I've wanted to do something, like I'm doing this council now, the women I'm asking to come on board, they're all top of their game, but they all feel humbled to be joining something. That means that network of soft power grows even better. And it's the humility in people that make the people the strongest. And I think sometimes we believe that we've got to shout the loudest to be heard, but actions and deeds are much stronger than loud words. And I think sometimes, and you'll see it, and I don't want it to become, a gender issue, but, women have a real strength. And as a woman, I embrace my strength of being able to be somebody that can bring people together. We're family makers. We know how to bring people together. And I think the great thing is about working alongside people then who actually know clear mission, clear direction, and how do they support you and how do you support them? I'm still got a lot of learning to do. If I can look back and say, what would I advise myself as a 20-year-old? I think I would have said I would have started earlier and not waited as long as I did. And maybe some of my other superficial things that I wanted at that age might have been less important. Now I know what COVID has delivered to us, because those things have become quite irrelevant to me. So I think that's for anybody, just, and read up on inspirational figures. Listen to people that you feel are great, but you don't have to go far away. Often you're surrounded by them in your own households.
So true. What do you feel? I must ask this because I found this out yesterday when I was researching you yet again. You have received 3 honorary doctorates. The first one was Wolverhampton University. The second one was Amity University in Noida, which is in India. And the third one was from the University of Leicester. How does that make you feel?
Well, for somebody who didn't go to university because culturally at that time I wasn't allowed to, it's a great honor, a great privilege to be able to receive these. The recognition is fantastic. But one of my missions, Leela, and I don't care if I'm an 80-year-old, if I did get there, I am going to get it on my own merit and study and get it. Because this is a great honor for me. At the moment, my life is far too busy and I don't have time, but I would love to be able to get it and say, I'll rock up on the stage and receive it with all the young grads of the day. When they're getting theirs, I'll rock up as an 80-year-old and get it myself. If I make it to 80.
And I wish you all the very best for that, because I have a similar goal in mind with my master's. So I would just like to take this opportunity, guys, to say a big thank you to the Baroness for having taken time out of what is clearly a very busy schedule even now. And thank you all for listening in and supporting us. Baroness, thank you all. Jai Hind. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.